Welcome to the Business of You podcast, the show dedicated to helping service entrepreneurs build a better brand to grow a bigger business. I'm your host, Michelle Griffin, and I'm here each week empowering you to put yourself out there, sharing actionable tips and inspiring stories so you can create your personal brand, grow your dream business, and build your future, all while making more income and more impact doing exactly what you love. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's show. Welcome everybody. It's Michelle Griffin and today's special guest is one and only Tara Horstmeyer. Welcome, Tara.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here, Michelle.
Yeah, no, we have been talking for quite a while and you have such a following on LinkedIn because what happened June 2020? What was that you told me behind the scenes you started doing?
I put myself out there and I said, hello, I'm here and I'm going to start writing some awesome content. Well, hopefully it's awesome.
No, it's awesome. Well, that's awesome. Well, first, let's tell everybody who you are, your backstory, why you're here today. Tell us real quick all the journey, what led you here today.
Oh gosh. So my journey began, it's kind of funny because I do feel like it's full circle in a lot of ways. I actually began my career almost 2 decades ago. I'm like aging myself, but as a career, as a journalist, as a writer, and as an editor. And then through the years, if anybody's been following me, you've seen kind of my winding path. I've talked about it to being a ministry director, doing all kinds of things. And then 3 years ago, next month, I ended up at Gravy. And of course, absolutely loved. That was such an impactful, huge part of my story. I would not be here today if it was not for Casey Graham and for Gravy.
Yay, shout out.
So, yeah. So I was doing that. And then about 6 months ago is when I left that awesome, career and moved more into a freelance and just more of a contract role. And so that's where I am here today.
But also you also started something on your own. You want to tell us real quick, give a shout out about that. And we can give you a shout out at the end too, but tell everyone what you just started, what went live today.
Yeah. So my website just went live today and it's Happy Words. If you've been on my page, you kind of know, and there's kind of a fun story about how I got that name, but I'm generally a pretty happy person, but I really love to make words and to help really others create content that moves people in a way they want. So I've really put myself out there now as a ghostwriter and as an editor. So again, coming full circle to where my career, where my degree began, all of that as a writer and as an editor. And now I get to do that, not just for myself, but for other people. And that's really what makes my heart soar.
Yeah, I can tell you lit up. Well, congratulations on that. That's a big step. And I know LinkedIn stepping out did help you to do that. Today we're here not only if you want to step out and be an entrepreneur, but if you're an executive, you're a leader, you're employed by a company, we can all get out there and show ourselves in a way that, not only helps ourselves, but that's really not what branding in my way is about. It's about putting yourself out there to help others. And that's totally what we're both online and in sync with. But tell us how you did it. Tell us what we need to know to get started, to do the right things.
Yeah. So I really started my journey, I say, visibly a year ago, a little over a year ago. But the crazy thing is, or the really cool thing is that my journey really started a year and a half ago or even more as I was watching other people. I was like your LinkedIn lurker. So everybody's like, if I'm lurking, I'm like, it's okay. Take your time to get your feet wet, to learn. That's a big part of who I am is I love to just kind of see what other people are doing, see what's going on. Same thing if I go out to a party. I mean, I'm going to have a good time and meet people, but I also love to just kind of be a fly on the wall and just kind of gauge the room, read the room, see what's going on. And so really that's what I did on LinkedIn for a while. I made probably a few posts here and there, and then COVID hit, but I was really watching Casey, our CEO, and seeing how he was literally impacting so many lives, so helpful, helping support a lot of that content, and then just really getting my feet wet by starting to comment. That's what I tell everybody, hey, if you're a little nervous about putting your voice and your words out there, number one, that's okay, because it means that you actually want to put the authentic you out there. And I've got a whole theory around that, but it also is a great time to just say, hey, I'm going to spend some time commenting on somebody else's thoughts, just adding my own flair. And then over time seeing hey, other people I'm, kind of seeing in the comments here, maybe I can connect with. I spend a lot of time just getting my feet wet by commenting on other people, which is still my favorite thing to do in the world. But also I took it offline as people really were doing LinkedIn well. Josh Braun, Marcus Chan, I was in a sales role at that time. So I was drawn to sales leaders that literally I would open up my LinkedIn and have like my notebook and be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to school today, because they were so helpful, like genuinely helped my career, to where I would be like, okay, I just learned this tactic, SDRs, let's try that. Or I'm going to try that in my messaging, or I'm going to do this. And then would just like reach behind the scenes and tell them like, hey, thanks. This like really helped me. And to my surprise, now I'm not surprised, but they would respond. And then so I was able to connect on just, again, a genuine level and build relationships. Before last June, I was like, okay, I'm ready to like not just comment or respond, but actually initiate a conversation and just start to write from my point of view, with the hopes that, hey, how all these amazing people have helped me and continue to help me, maybe I can do that for someone else too. That's really, how I began and how I just got the journey going.
Well, we're so glad you did. And that, describing those people, that's what I kind of describe as an impactful personal brand. People who show up to help others using their expertise or wisdom, they're all about. And so look, they gave you the confidence. You were commenting, you're connecting me. They gave you that extra confidence and even the skills and strategies. You said, I'm doing it. That's kind of like what I did December 31st, 2020. And so what was it like? Did you just get out there? Did you have a strategy? I know that's kind of your wheelhouse, but for someone who's maybe not schooled in journalism and writing, where should they start? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I wish I had like a huge strategy. I didn't. Like, honestly, when I started, I was just like, okay, this is interesting to me. I had a strategy, as in like I had Casey to really guide and show and help. I know not everybody has that. So I don't take that for granted one bit. But the really cool thing was that I did have expertise. I did have strategy on me. And I did know like, hey, I'm going to, again, start to follow some other people and see, okay, what are they doing that is really helping other people? And how are they writing? What are they writing on topics? So for me, it wasn't sitting out and busting out like a whole, content calendar, because it's like that's what I was doing for work. But it was really like, hey, I'm just going to test in the moment. I'm going to write about stuff that I'm passionate about and that I actually know about. And I'm going to weave in some personal stories. And so the first, I would say 3 months were a little, not strategic, so to speak. They were very much in the moment. But I think what like kind of removing, at least in the beginning for me, the stress of like, I need this big comprehensive strategy, is that it allowed me to write in the moment, to write from a place of feeling as much as I wrote from a place of thinking. And in doing so, it allowed, again, like the authentic me to shine through, because I tend to be an overthinker. I'm thinking too far, like I'm just not even going to execute. I was, kind of conditioned myself to say, hey, I'm going to stick to these topics. I'm going to bring in myself. But then through doing that, I did develop more of a strategy, more of a voice, more of a vision of who I wanted to post for.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So you got the confidence from just commenting and meeting these people. And then I want to talk a lot about the personal side, because that's something I actually will be honest and say I struggle with being more personable. I mean, I feel like I am a personable person, but I tend to be private. So I'm extroverted, but I'm private. So it's really weird. I love the way you approach being authentic. I know that's a buzzword, but real, relatable. Give us your best thoughts on what you did and what you're seeing and what you tell your clients or help your clients.
Yeah. I mean, I think another buzzword is storytelling, but it's like, what does that mean? I think I love story. I love it because it illustrates in a way that just really grabs people, brings them in, because we all love stories ever since we're little. Story just for story's sake, is that for me or is that for the person on the other end? When I bring in my copywriting, my sales background, as in not like, hey, I'm trying to sell you some words or anything, but more of, I always think through whenever I write something, who am I talking to? What's the why here? Like, why should anybody care?
Exactly.
So I write from a place of like, nobody cares, ever. Like, we're all busy. We're all on our phone. Nobody should care. Like, I also don't ever expect anybody ever to like, read what you write. And I think when you let that go, then it allows like really the natural storyteller in you to come to say, hey, I really hope that this story shines a light on whatever it is that you want or that you think can help the person on the other end, even if it's just to say, hey, life kind of sucks sometimes. Here's some ways to handle the suckiness. Like, that's helpful too.
Yeah, no. And too, I tell my clients, like, don't take it personally because we all do. We're humans. We're busy. We're in the feed and, we're all just wired to kind of look at right in front of us what's in our mind or what's important. It's not that your content's bad. It's just, it's maybe not hitting. But at some point, even if we impact one person, that's all that takes one time, right? And then the old article about you only need 1,000 true fans online. We don't need viral hits, viral posts all the time. You want to just slowly build that impact. I love that. So Tara, you have quite the fan base. When I put it out here that you were my guest, it was just, everyone was so excited. I want to know what makes that special you that you develop. You have that community of people who really admire you, but you did something to make them feel that way. Not make them, but they felt that way. Is it your storytelling? Is it the part posts about you? What was it? Or what is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you'd have to ask, people. I mean, I'm obviously people are at the heart of everything that I do and say. And my hope is that I come across as genuine as you see me online, you would see me in person, that I'm going to be just as bubbly, just as responsive. It's a huge thing for me. When I first started, I would just not to post and ghost. And again, this is not a judgment on anybody. I'm like, especially we all have a ton of things going on, but also if I know I'm going to have a really busy day and for some random reason I wouldn't be able to respond as quickly as I could, I wouldn't post because I care so much about engaging with other people, whether they send me a DM, whether it's in the post or in the comments themselves, that I want people to always feel that I'm somebody who they can ask questions, is approachable, is warm, is able to help them wherever they are, or at least just give encouragement of hey, keep going, because you know what? This world is going to tear you down. I never want to be that person who's going to do that for someone. I'd rather be someone to build somebody up. I think that is just naturally me. Yeah. And if it helps somebody, then awesome. And I know I've made some really great connections, but hopefully they feel like it's mutual. It's not just Tara, this is helpful, but it's hey, you're really helping me by giving me a different perspective, having a conversation. Because when it comes to engagement, I just focus really on comments back and forth and conversations. That to me is the lifeblood of LinkedIn more than anything that I get to do.
No, I agree with you completely. We are so alike because I'm all about having, people first. I always had been a people first marketer. So I love that. That's so interesting okay, so you were doing all this, you got that experience. So 6 months later, what made you change your mind? Not change your mind. What made you decide to jump into entrepreneurship? What was the trigger?
Yeah. A lot of people ask that, honestly, it is part of my story. So I always say I've got a lot of kids. Really, I've got 3. And they are a handful. if any parents out there have kids in travel sports, I've got an almost 13-year-old son, all boys, 10-year-old and 3-year-old. And they were only, they were 6 months younger. Really, the move into entrepreneurship wasn't hey, I'm leaving this to go toward this. It was, I'm leaving, doing something that I absolutely love and was able to hand off things and just to incredible people who honestly are taking things way further and faster than I ever could in order to do things that I could do just in a more flexible way, a flexible manner. It's I hit 40 and kids and all of this. And I'm okay, I just need to be more present than I can. And not that I wasn't able to be present, but I just know myself very well. And, in order to get that breathing room and that more, flexible schedules and all of that, it was just kind of the right time to say, hey, this is what's next, but also to honor everything that brought me there. And the fact that I'm still very close and still Gravy's #1 cheerleader.
Oh yeah. No, I know. They're awesome. And you haven't moved far. You're still in the same city and all, right? So you probably see them a lot.
Still hanging.
You're still hanging. Well, that's awesome. So now you're working you came full circle. This topic, writing relationally on LinkedIn, is so near and dear to your heart. As I promised everyone in the beginning, you're going to give us some tips and ideas on how to do that for ourselves so we can authentically, buzzword alert, show up and help others. Tell us how to do that.
Yeah. So first thing is, a little bit more, I guess, tactical. I'm going to do a little bit opposite, where I'm going to start with some tactics and then move to more of the way to think about it. But tactically speaking, just because I know a lot of people are okay, just give me kind of the notes of what I can do now and I write a lot about this. This is nothing new, but do it. So #1 is going to be that speak your notes or speak your posts into your phone. Pull up your notes, use the dictate And what you do when you do that is you're allowing your actual self and the way you form words and the way you form ideas, even if it's just, hey, I have a general post or I have a story. Now that, Tara said that actually reminds me of this one time, and so bust out. And even if it's just like 2 or 3 little notes or sense, or if you can flesh out an entire post, so to speak, or an entire story, do that in a way on your phone so that it actually records the way you sound, and then you can go back and pretty it up. So that's one thing. Obviously, the other big things are going to be connect with people, go where they are. If you want to write more relationally, be more relational. Like that sounds kind of counter, it's like, oh, well, duh. But no, really, like practice your chops. And that could mean reaching out, via DM of somebody, again, that has helped you and impacted you. Just start a relationship, start talking to people behind your keyboard like you would in person. But that takes skill. Like that isn't, everybody's like, go do this and go do that. But you're right. Nobody really tells you how to do this.
Yes.
Practice being a keyboard relationship warrior. Like other people practice being like keyboard warriors in a negative sense, try in a positive sense, go out and give encouragement, give, positive thoughts and connect with people, ask questions. I was a journalist, so I'm really big on being curious and asking questions, especially if someone on your post or somebody in a comment just says, hey, this was helpful. I'm always like, hey, what was helpful? Tell me more. Like, I'm really curious. And then they're like, oh, it was this and that. So just practice writing back and forth in a relational way, like start connecting, start doing relationships. Look back at all of, your content, whether that's stuff that you put out or stuff that you kind of keep in notes or keep whatever, and say, hey, does this resonate with me? Like, honestly, does this impact me? And where does it impact me? Does it hit my mind? Does it hit my heart? Is it inspiring me to do something? Is it inspiring me to think, and why? And so start to unpack your own content. And then when you do, I think you're going to start to connect with yourself, which is the number one way to connect with others, is when you truly know who you are and you're able to put that authentic, that true self out there. People are able to see that. And then that shortens the gap between you and the other person, and it connects the dots, because they're like, hey, that is actually Michelle. Like, I can feel her in this, or I can see how she's thinking, and I'm drawn to that person, even if that's not what I think or do. But hey, I can see, where we can connect. So that's kind of more strategically.
Okay.
Of like tactical things. Now, relationally connecting is like a whole different game. I talked about a little bit of like this one mindset change is really what helped me just say, hey, I'm looking at LinkedIn as sustainable, not just like something I'm doing right now to meet XYZ goal.
Yes.
Is I'm here because of the people and because of the relationship. But when I really moved to saying every single piece of content, and I kind of talked about this, but really, does this help someone? Is this helpful? And it sounds so obvious, but is this helpful? Read yourself. Is this helpful? Is this helpful? And why? Why is this helpful, or how is this helpful? And then when you do that, I think you are able to all of a sudden not just feel like, oh, I'm just putting out a blog post or I'm just putting out something, but I'm really putting out content that can move the other person, whether through their heart, through their mind, through their hands, or just through myself to themselves.
I love that. So you almost want to have an overarching takeaway. What's my gift in this message, in this content? Love these tactics. And I wanted to shout out I love the idea of the talk to text. I'm a big talk to texter, my cell phone messages. And also I tell my clients that too, because you censor yourself when you write, or maybe censor is not the right word, but you block your flow. One of the things I love to do, and if you guys aren't familiar, for free, Otter AI, it'll transcribe as you talk. I know like Google Docs and some of those aren't as effective, but I love Otter AI. So, and then you can just download it and edit it. And that's probably a way if you want to batch content too, you just go and talk it out. I love that. Love those tactics. Love the takeaways about what's my gift, educate, inspire, motivate, a force for good through our content, really. And that keeps you not being promotionally, because, sometimes you don't realize you want to give yourself credit, but then there's a way if you're doing it too much or whatever, it just looks like you're all about you. Be a giver, right? Be a giver. So love that. Okay, let's get into strategy, Tara. What are some of your top strategies for doing what?
As far as like what I do like professionally or
Oh,
what
I mean, like be more
yeah.
relationship driven on LinkedIn with our content. What are some ways we can do that?
Yeah. So I think obviously we've already talked about, having the why, having the takeaway, but when you really are, and this is, I mean, shout out to our, our bud, Justin Welsh. I mean, he does this better than everybody else. Anybody who's like, I want to just start like, go get his courses.
Yes.
Start there, because what I love what he does and what it really does is it just focuses you in. And this is hard for most of us, especially when I start, whether you are just trying to say, okay, I can talk about literally anything under the sun. All of us are multifaceted people. We've got opinions on everything from, what pizza should I order to, what's the best sales strategy for a startup, and everything in between. And those are all great. Like that makes you. But when it comes to creating content on LinkedIn, really focusing in on, hey, when somebody sees my name or when they see my picture pop up, like what are they associating me with? What is that thing? And so a lot of people who kind of shy away, like, hey, I don't want to use the personal brand, buzzword or that. It's like, hey, your brand is there regardless.
Exactly.
People think something about you regardless. And so when it comes to LinkedIn, because you have to think, why are people here? Just like you post different on Facebook, you post different on Instagram. And that's purely because people come there looking for different things, so when I go to LinkedIn, I want personal, I love all that. I'm like, please give me all the pictures and all the things, but I'm going to associate that overarching topic with some, with that person when they're talking about it consistently. Find your niche, and just this great exercise that I'm still like honestly working through all the time just to really narrow down, because I've switched from being an SDR manager and leader. And even though communication was always like my jam, writing was, to really just honing in on writing. But now it's almost flipped where it was like sales first, writing second. Now it's like writing first and then sales and then, communication, connection. Like there's a few other things that hang down now, but without a strategy, I literally would wake up every day wanting to talk about something different. So know what you're about.
Stay in your lane, and then have that personable side sprinkled in, dropped in. I agree, because it is a different platform. We want to be personable here and humanize ourselves, but it is where business is done. And I think that's LinkedIn's official tagline for LinkedIn. But that's really smart. So what we want to be known for you now as a writer, right? Before it was Tara, the sales leader, because now you're still in that industry of sales on the people you're working with, right? Sales leaders. Is that still your industry for the most?
Yeah. So it's two, but it's really founders and, C-suite executives. And so, I mean, it's really leadership in business is what I write for other people. But yes, I mean, it's all revenue focused. And a lot of them were sales leaders, And honestly, I mean, they're still selling their companies. And, so I'm also the person that's like, we're all in sales.
Well, we really are. Yeah. Social sellers. Yeah. So wonderful. Okay. We have just the last tail end of our thing. I didn't want to respect everyone's time, but you have been so informative, so inspiring, as I do in all the interviews here. What are your top 3 takeaways that we can take? I know you already gave us a tip, so some of them have to repeat. I'm kind of asking you this twice. What are your top 3 takeaways for how to be more relationship driven when you write your content on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So I would say number 1 is to focus on other people. Like this is just copywriting 101. What's in it for the other person in a way that I can bring myself to help them. I always think through the other person, and also honoring and respecting them, as in the comment thing that I'm really big about. So I'm like, be relational, and you can be more fun and silly. And you're like, I'm way more funny in my comments, I feel like, than like posting, so that's also a thing. Like, don't be afraid to be yourself, even if you don't put 500 emojis in your post, put them in your comments. Or if you do, put them in your post and you want to be more serious as you're talking to someone about, a heavier subject, do that. Like, don't be afraid to bring all sides of you in the words that you use. That's what I would say is number 1, obviously be yourself, but use yourself authentically. The next one I would say is always make sure that you are writing daily, like creating something daily. Even if you do not post daily. So I always say write privately before you write publicly. So I'm a big fan of journaling, of just getting my words out there so that I can process them before I put them out into the world. Not even just posts, but like my thoughts in general about certain topics. That's why I do think having a strategy helps you, because it forces you to sit there and think and to write privately before you write publicly. And then I think the last thing is, honestly, like, this was one of the funniest tips I think I gave out on something I wrote, but smile when you write. Like, people, especially in sales, like, there's smile and dial, because the whole point is that you really want to get your enthusiasm. If it's a topic that you're smiling about, I mean, I've written about stuff that I'm like, I'm not smiling. Like, this is hard. But when you do write, for the most part, try smiling, try when you're dictating, like, smile, and you'll naturally your brain will start to choose words that are more in line with your feeling and mood than if you were to be a little more stoic. But on the flip side, if it's something more serious, then I wouldn't say don't smile, but, try to use more language that really match the tone and the desire of that piece of content. And just doing something simple like smiling when you're writing can help lighten the mood and help you connect from a more genuine place.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to try that. I've never thought about that. I love that tip. The second one about, I wanted to offer to the listeners here, and also to hashtag if you're live or in a replay. One of my favorite websites for the daily thing is 750words.com. It's based on the writer's page, where you at least can get 750 words. It's equivalent like a page and a half or something, or you don't even have to do that many, but I have subscribed to 750words.com for like 4 years now. Check it out. And I'm not an affiliate. I just think it's really cool. Okay. So those are great tips. I'm going to use those. This is the other question I love asking people, because everyone gives me such great advice. Tara, what's your favorite personal or professional mantra that you want to share with others to inspire us?
Yeah, it's funny, I was kind of thinking about a couple of these. So the tag that I use a little bit is, and I'll play with it, and I'm like, I just probably need to just make it more my official tag, but I say a lot: stand up, speak up, post up, and write up. And so really what that is I think it's a version of you're putting yourself out there, but it takes effort and energy. Nobody just passively sits down. It's like, taking ownership, stand up, speak up, post up, write up, like, just keep getting yourself out there, keep being active about that. But what it really lends itself to is, I think, the one, I was really thinking about, and that it takes courage, and courage really is grace under fire. It's from, Hemingway's Courage is Grace Under Pressure. But, anybody who says, including me, if I ever say, hey, it's easy, just go out there and post and do whatever. I don't believe that, because I do believe that if you're just putting words on a page, but when we write, and when we write from a place that's deep inside of us, even if that is just tactical advice, that is still our tactical advice. Even if it's just a strategy or a process, it's still our strategy and process. When you own what you're doing, there's no way to hide behind a mask. And so when somebody comes out or has an opinion, they're really coming into a place where you're like, oh, I put myself out there. Yeah. Takes courage, but that's where grace comes in, not just grace toward you, but grace toward other people and their points of view. And when they post, you are going to be the bigger cheerleader, because you understand, like, hey, it's not easy to put yourself out there. And in my opinion, it really shouldn't be. It should be something that requires courage, but it should refine you in the same way that grace refines you.
Oh, I love that. It was like my post yesterday. It's like, we have to leave our comfort zone to get into the growth zone. Is that exactly what you said? Well, this has been tremendous. So let's tell everyone where we can find you, because your website just launched today. Let us know where can we find you, and tell us where we can follow you too.
Yes, well, definitely follow me here on LinkedIn and Tara Horstmeyer. And then my website is happywordsell.com. Check it out. Let me know what you think.
I can't wait to check it out. Yeah. So everyone go check out Tara. If you're not following her, go follow her. She's got phenomenal content, and she's always going to lift you up. If you think she's giving you stuff here now, watch and see what she gives. I'm always saving some of her posts for future consumption or to go back on. Tara, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And we're going to talk after, because we're going to catch up on some more things. But I want to thank you all. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We definitely need more impactful entrepreneurs like you out there. So if you'd like to learn more about how I can help you build your personal brand to grow your business, please check out yourbrandyourbusiness.com. And until next time, you have a brand to build, a message to share, and people to impact. Now go put yourself out there and watch the business of you grow.